You know how every franchise has been ruined by a remake?
Yes.
And Back to the Future hasn't.
Right?
Okay, so let's say that an executive, gun to your head, wants you to remake and ruin this Back to the Future franchise.
Kill me. Kill me.
Okay, he's killed you.
Yeah.
He brings you back. He's pointing your gun at John Wick's dog. He says, you have to write Back to the Future remake or I'm going to kill John Wick's dog.
Yeah. And John Wick's just looking at me with his puppy dog eyes. So is this like Back to the Future 4? So like...
I guess, yeah. It'd be like a Back to the Future, or like a reboot.
Okay, because you can't...
It's going to ruin the franchise. It's going to be a reboot.
Right. You can't have Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in it. So you're not really bringing back the original cast?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I say don't bring back the original cast.
Yeah.
If that's the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Not even a cameo? Not even a cameo?
I wouldn't even do a cameo.
No.
Yeah, I don't. I personally, I mean, like, I think that's something we should debate. But personally, I don't like them.
You don't like cameos?
I don't like them in popular franchises. I like them in non-popular franchise. Like, I like the fact that Django had the original Django in it.
Okay.
Because most people don't know what that is. But everyone knows who, like, the Ghostbusters are. So when you have the Ghostbusters in the new Ghostbusters movie, it's not, you're just...
You feel like, wow, I really wish I was watching the old Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Why don't you just make that movie then?
Yeah.
But so I don't know. Do you like the cameos?
I mean, when you put it that way,
Yeah.
it does make sense. Where it's just kind of like, I enjoy the cameos. There is something kind of like kiddish in me that's kind of like, ooh, look at there they are. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think that you're probably right in that. I also feel that way, where it's like, yeah, that original was way better, and I would have preferred to just watch that again.
Yeah.
But the trick with Back to the Future 4, Back to the Future reboot,
right.
Back to the Future,
right,
is that we'd have to make it good somehow. We'd have to make it watchable, which is not. Is that possible? I don't know if that's even possible.
It's not.
Like you're gonna ruin the franchise.
Yeah,
if you do it.
I think.
But we have a gun to our heads.
Right.
We have a gun to John Wick's dog's head.
Yes. So this is a gun to the head situation, because otherwise, I'd be like, fire me.
Yeah.
Or like,
we don't want to do it.
Yeah, like you're under contract. They'd be like, put me in jail. I don't want to do Back to the Future 4. So I think we're in agreement on that. Like, we should not do Back to the Future 4.
Yeah, this is part of the culture.
Yeah.
And you don't mess with the culture.
Right.
Like it's important.
But somebody has...
Leave it alone.
This is a literal... Somebody is sitting you down and forcing you to write this thing. So you may as well make it as good as you can.
Yeah, so we have to make the best of it.
So it's going to be a whole new story.
Yeah.
Do you do like Doc Brown... has passed away, maybe even like a couple years ago. So it's not a recent thing. He passed away a couple years ago, and his estate is now either up for sale or some distant relatives are going to get his estate.
Maybe. I mean, here's there's two ways of going about it.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a Back to the Future, which means they start out wherever they are and they go back to the past.
Okay.
So there's two ways of doing it. They start out modern day.
Yeah.
And go back to the 90s. Or they start out in the future and they go back to today.
Yeah. I think you start it today, modern day.
Yeah.
And it's a 2025 film. And then they go back to 1995.
Okay.
So
if they went back to the 80s, then it would be hard to justify them not running into Doc and Marty.
Yeah.
But if they went to the 90s, then we could be like, okay, yeah, whatever. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do they find the DeLorean? do they build their own time machine, or is it like an uncovering of the DeLorean? It has to have the DeLorean in it.
Yeah.
It's got to be a DeLorean.
Here's the tough part, though.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, if they go back to the 90s, though, they can find Doc Brown, who knows about the time machine, and he can help them. So, like, they almost can't go back to a time that Doc Brown is in.
No, Antha, you're thinking you're not thinking in the fourth dimension. Doc Brown never made it to the 90s. He went back to 1885, and then he is traveling time to time. So he didn't live out his years in the 80s. He never made it to 95.
Yeah, he maybe never made it to 95.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, he could have been, like, in the 80s and then just been jumping around, and then eventually jumped to, like, 2020.
Yeah.
And then died of some weird disease that happened in 2020. And then... And then he passes away. And then, like, years later, they find, like, oh, you actually, are relatives of him, and this is yours. I guess this is now yours.
Oh, that's not bad. Like, maybe not the estate, but yeah, like, they're the next of kin.
Yes.
And so they inherit the DeLorean.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And maybe they can be like, why didn't we learn about this sooner? And they're like, yeah, well, we found this guy. And we didn't know who he was. And then, like, eventually...
we got this letter.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually, like, I don't know, some weird processing thing where they were like... Because Doc Brown's been traveling through time, so, like, they're like, why is this random guy here all of a sudden? And then he's like a John Doe for a long time, and then they finally discover who he is.
I kind of like that, where it's like, they had trouble figuring out who this guy was because he had multiple birth certificates.
Yeah.
From different years.
Yes.
And then also, like, we thought he died in the 80s, but then he resurfaced in the 20s.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, like,
that would make him 147 years old.
Right, yeah. And then I also like the idea of, like, if they don't know what the DeLorean does, they don't know it's a time machine, they just think it's a DeLorean.
Yeah.
And then it's all, like, decked out, and they're like, what the heck did he do to this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, wait. There's a little bit of a loophole here, or
yes.
Plot hole. Is it going to be the 2025 of today, or is it going to be the 2025 of the franchise?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the 2025 of today. Because the 2025 of the franchise is a different time branch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
I'm not thinking fourth dimensionally.
Yeah, so for some weird reason, it turns out that if Biff becomes famous and rich, we get hoverboards, flying cars, and a way better future than what we got here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that was the missing ingredient, was Biff needed to become famous for all that to happen.
Well, I like the idea of, like, it's a tangent. It's a different timeline.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the timeline that's us, where Doc Brown maybe doesn't make it, and there's these distant relatives that are inheriting the DeLorean.
Yeah. I'm having so much trouble figuring out where to take this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's because there's a part of me that wants John Wick's dog to die. Because otherwise we don't have the cool John Wick movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's what's difficult about this is it's you can't make a Back to the Future 4 good.
Yeah.
Without the original cast.
Yeah.
So doing a full reboot with, like, full new characters, it's not going to be good. And that's the problem that we're running into.
Yeah, I think it is the problem. I think you can make it fun if you pick a plot line that's different from the originals. Yeah. But mirrors the conflict of going back in time and potentially like erasing yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and then, like the first one did such a great job of that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's not the creepiest movie ever made, despite the fact that it's it's like the creepiest plot line.
Yeah.
But it's not the creepiest movie ever made.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you do that?
So yeah, this is kind of the problem. Is we can make a movie.
Yeah.
We can make a Back to the Future movie, but can we make it good?
Yeah.
And we might not be able to. This might be the wall. We might have hit a wall here.
Yeah. You could have, I mean, I don't know. Now I'm thinking of like some weird storyline where like the person, the teenager who goes back in time is trying to, now they're like trying to do the opposite where they're trying to get their parents, they're trying to get like maybe their mom or dad to not connect with their high school crush, because then later on they reconnect with the high school crush in this like weird cheating situation where now like their parent, so like, their mom, Carol, and their dad, Bob, but then it turns out Bob isn't their dad.
They get around. Oh,
their dad is actually the high school crush.
Jeez, this.
Yeah, right. It's so modern though.
It's modern.
Such a modern movie where just like these are the kind of like things that people deal with today.
I feel like it needs to be more kind of like the wholesome family. I mean, not that. I mean, when you really think about the content in the Back to the Future trilogy, like it wasn't super wholesome and family, but it felt like it was.
Yes.
It felt personal.
Yeah.
So I almost I almost wonder if like it might make sense for there to be maybe there's a little brother.
Okay.
So he's like 4, 5.
Yes.
And he ends up in the DeLorean and going back into the 90s.
Yeah.
And now like this older siblings have to like figure out where he went.
Yeah.
Like maybe like the DeLorean from the 90s. Like they find it and have to go back to the 90s to find their little brother to prevent him from like screwing things up in the future or from getting hurt.
Okay, so they've got
now it's personal.
They've got a little brother, maybe like
a toddler.
I don't know if it's that young. Somebody young,
like Goonies age.
Yeah, I don't know if I even go that old.
Okay. Yeah,
like 8.
Not so old that they know better, but like old enough to get into trouble.
Yeah, like how old was the kid from Lion? Remember that movie Lion, where the kid lost his older brother in India?
Yeah, that was a great movie.
What was he, like 6, 5 or 6?
Something like that. Yeah, like 5, 6.
Yeah, it's got to be something. 5 actually might be the perfect age because it's sort of like
it's kindergartner.
You're old enough to like walk around the block,
Yeah.
But you're not.
You can get into stuff. You can get into trouble.
But you're still young enough where like you probably don't know your parents' names, or your home address, or anyone's phone number.
It's like maybe they end up going back in time.
Yes.
By accident.
Yes.
Lose their little brother.
Yes.
And then go back to the future and things are messed up.
Yes.
So they have to go back to the 90s to figure out what their little brother did.
Yes.
And try and undo it.
That's not too bad. What if the little brother does remember the name of the mom, and they end up sending him to the house of the mother, where this is her future son. And now
it's like teenage mother.
Yes. This is gonna be her son.
Yeah.
But like she doesn't know who this kid is.
Yeah.
But the kid knows she's mom.
Yeah.
She looks like mom, just younger.
Yeah.
And somehow mom misses her date with Bob, and Bob is dad.
Okay. But then
So now her and Bob don't get together, which means they're not going to have the kids.
Ooh, okay. So they don't go back to the future then, yet. what happens is the eldest disappears.
Oh, yeah.
And now, like, they're on a clock,
yes.
and they're trying to figure out, like, what the hell just happened? Like, we have to figure out how to get Biffy back. Biffy.
The baby's name is Biffy? That's not bad.
It's named after Biff.
Biffy Buchanan.
Yeah, it's this great guy I knew in high school, Biff. He just had a bad run-in with manure, changed his life.
Yeah, so the oldest, here's the cool thing too, you have the oldest be the one who's like calm, in control, and knows what to do.
Yeah, yes.
Then they're like, okay, like here's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, they start fading, they disappear.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's, whatever, it's the older sister and the little brother, the 5-year-old. And she has to, like, now figure out, like, what did he do?
Are we doing the main character is going to be Lady McFly? Is that what we're doing?
I think we can. We can have, someone who looks like Elizabeth Shue. And we can, because it'll feel, I think, more like a reboot if we do that. If we get someone who feels like a 17-year-old kid, then it's going to be like, he's not as good as Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, so you want to...
Like, you're not going to get somebody as good as Michael J. Fox. So I think that you get someone as separated from Michael J. Fox as possible so that the audience doesn't feel like, I wish I was watching the original.
Yeah. How old is she?
I think she's got to be around the same age. She's got to be young enough that she has a 5-year-old brother.
16?
But yeah, like old enough though, like that she can figure out. She could be good at problem solving, so she could be like a high schooler. Yeah.
So, so the baby goes back in time.
I think that I think it might just be a plot hole if just the baby goes back in time.
Are there two DeLoreans? Or are there two are there two DeLoreans? Or does she start looking through the notes, figure out like this is a time machine that went back in time, which means it still exists today somewhere.
Yeah, that's one route. We could take that route, or we could have all three of them end up back in time by accident.
Yeah.
And then they, like, lose their little brother.
Yeah.
And after they find him, then the older brother vanishes.
So the older brother, after they find him, the older brother vanishes.
Yeah, because it's got to feel like, okay, we found him, now we can go back.
Yeah.
And then he disappears, and it's like, we can't go back. What happened?
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Right?
Yeah, so you're saying all three of them go back.
Yeah.
At the same time.
By accident. Like, they're just going on, like, a road trip or something. They hit 88.
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion activates, right?
Yeah.
They don't need uranium anymore. They've got Mr. Fusion.
All three of them go back.
Yeah.
How does it turn out that they meet? So all three of them meet the parent? Or does just the baby meet the parent? Why am I missing? I'm missing some plot here. Go ahead.
All three of them go back in time, and then they lose their little brother.
Oh.
While they're in the 90s.
Yes.
They're like, where are we? What is this? Like, what's with all the colorful shirts?
Yes.
And then, like, we lost our brother, and they're trying to find a brother.
Yeah.
Little brother finds his way to
the mom.
To his mom's house.
So, like, some security guard picks up the brother.
Yeah.
And then they're like, who's your family? And he's like saying the names of his brothers and sisters. Then he's like, my mom's name is, and they're like, okay, we'll give him to his mom.
Yeah.
And they look up the.
You know what? It would make more sense.
Yeah. And
might even be a little funnier if he sees his dad instead. Because his mom would have a maiden name at this point, which he wouldn't know.
Oh, yes.
So he says his dad's name.
Yeah.
First and last name.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and it's like this 17-year-old version of his father.
Yeah.
Who's like, I don't know what I don't know what to do with this baby. Like, all right.
Yeah. That is a little bit better.
Yeah. So he's with his father. Yeah. Father misses the date. And then, like, mother's now, like, pissed at him. And it's like, like, Bob doesn't even show up to his dates. Yeah. He made up some excuse about having a 5-year-old to look after.
Yeah. Like, you have a son?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So
that's not bad.
Like, whatever. 17-year-old father doesn't know what he's doing with the kid. He's out and about.
Yeah.
they see him, and they like grab him to go. The siblings.
Yeah.
The siblings see him. They grab him to go. Father like looks around like, oh my gosh, somebody stole my kid.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, we got our kid. We could go back to the future. Older brother disappears.
Yes.
And they're like, what happened? What did? Yeah.
That's not bad. Yes. Do we have an issue with the time machine as well, going back, or is the time machine like always going to be capable of going? And they the main conflict is just them being like, how do we fix this older brother situation? You know.
That's a good point. I think that we don't have to address it until until the older brother comes back.
The older brother. Okay, just hear me out.
Uh-oh.
You know exactly where I'm going with this at first, but just hear me out. The older brother doesn't come back. No, hear me out. Then here's what happens. So they think they fix it because they get the parents. They get the parents together. Then she's waiting for the older brother to come back, but he doesn't.
Okay.
So then they're like, oh my gosh. So now she's like, we have to go back. And they're like, I don't know. And she's like, so they just think like that's it. So they go back, but he's there when they go back.
He's a part of the new timeline that they created.
Yes.
I like that.
So the conflict is like her being like, how about this? The DeLorean is set to go back on its own. And they're trying to she's trying to now change, don't go back in 32 hours. Don't go back in 32 hours, but it's broken. It's not nothing's changing. It's set set to leave when you turn it on. It's already preset, and then it's set to return at a certain time.
So there's got to be some kind of chronicles of Doc Brown, some schematic or some chronicle that they have on them. And she's reading through it, trying to figure out, okay, what happened? What did we do? How do we get back?
Yes.
And that could, maybe be part of it is, after some trouble that we had in 1885.
Yes.
I created a failsafe.
Yeah.
Where, in the event that, we, run out of gasoline or something, then we have this, this burst of energy for the flux capacitor, or burst of energy for the flux capacitor to get us back to where we first started.
Yeah.
After 48 hours.
Yes.
So that we don't end up stuck wherever we landed.
Yeah. You don't end up stuck there, and you don't end up, leaving a time machine somewhere. It's gonna return.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
so it could be as simple as that. Yeah. I like the idea of something like that.
You could even just have
a timeline.
You could even just have a panel that says return in 32 hours and seconds, and it's counting down.
A ticking clock.
Yeah, and they're
needs a ticking clock.
Yeah, and then they're trying to start the car, and it won't. It'll start but then they're it's not doing anything, and it's it doesn't return until
Yeah.
So it's maybe Doc Brown could go in there and do some wizardry to get it to return faster. Right. But they're not Doc
these
Brown.
Are not scientists.
Yeah, they're just kids.
Yeah.
So they're just I guess it just returns in 32 hours. There's nothing we can do about it. Right. And then the brother disappears, and now this thing's going to return in 32 hours, and she's trying to figure out how to get it to not return in 32 hours, Because she's the brother hasn't come back, but then it returns. But then he's in the future. Yeah. Because why would he return to the past?
Right.
He's not there anymore.
He's already disappeared.
Yeah, and there's now a new timeline.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Man.
I know.
We may have actually come up with a story that's engaging.
And I think you just don't ever... I would just never reference the old stuff as much as you can.
Yeah.
This is just once again a story about a kid getting lost in time and trying to find their way back while fixing the mistakes they made along the way.
Yeah.
That's what this is a story about,
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to have a scene with the father and daughter going to prom together. We will not have that scene.
No, we're not going to do that.
A little bit. It's a little bit different than when Marty was with his mom. It would be.
Yeah. It'd feel very different.
Yeah.
I think that it would be something. It would make more sense for her. Like she'd feel more comfortable going to her mother.
Yes.
And like talking to her mother about like giving Bob a second chance.
Yes.
And like trying to fix it in that way.
Yeah.
Rather than like going to her father and being like, it's like sweep her off her feet, you know, like it's like, like it's just like it's a different dynamic. A 17-year-old boy does not, you know, easily make friends with a girl without it getting weird, and we're not gonna get weird. So we're so it's gonna be more like, no, I'm gonna like make friends with my mom, try and get her to like give Bob a second chance because he's a really great guy. He's a good dad.
What? I feel like what if? I wonder if there should be. We should do something weird where like, what if like the grandma is kind of like she's talking to like the grandma, you know, and the grandma's kind of like telling her stuff that like way makes sense, almost like the grandma knows she was going to go back. Like the grandma's already met her.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
It would make sense. It would make sense for the grandma to be more in the know because they're supposed to be distant relatives of Doc.
Yeah.
Right?
But
what? So the grandma would maybe be like a cousin.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know, like my cousin he did some weird stuff.
Yeah.
He did some weird stuff in the 80s.
Your voice is just gone.
Yeah,
I'm
turning into Harvey Fierstein.
Yeah, your voice disappeared from going
David.
back in time. Yeah.
David!
Oh, from Independence. Yeah, the guy from Independence Day. Yeah, like, no, I'm saying, like, what if, like, somebody already went back in time to help fix fix a problem? So the grandma is clued into what's going on and is giving hints on what to do to fix it. Because the first time it didn't work.
All right, I
don't want her to be too. Does that get too complicated?
I don't want her to be too Deus Ex Machina. Where it's just like whenever we have a problem, we go to Grandma and she has an answer for us. Like, like because I want them to feel a little bit like a little more fish out of water. Like what do we do? Like, let's just undo what we did, and maybe that'll fix it.
Yeah.
Because then it'll be more like impactful when it doesn't get fixed.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to the future and like see their brother, it's like, oh, like he's still here, he's still alive, he's just part of this new timeline that we created.
Yeah. Oh, you know
what
would
be
be
different.
You know it'd be a really stupid idea, but it might be fun. Is what if you set up a storyline where like their grandpa turned out to be one of these like famous mass murderers, you know? But they didn't know it. They didn't know it until like after he died. Yeah. And then they go back in time and now they're meeting with the grandpa.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my, and now they're trying to like,
hey kids.
Yes, they're trying to make sure they don't get killed by their own grandpa. Is that too much? Too much? Isn't that a funny, I think that's kind of an interesting storyline though. But it might not be a Back to the Future storyline. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a little dark. It's hard to say. You know, when you really think about the content of the Back to the Future trilogy, it's really dark content. It's just done in such a light, fun way that you don't even notice.
Yeah, you don't realize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, the scene where Marty's looking at the picture and he's like disappearing always creeped me out as a kid.
Yeah.
That like that means somebody could go back in time because you don't really realize as a kid like people can't go back in time. That means someone can go back in time and just erase me.
Yeah.
That creeped me out. So I think even kids today still get kind of creeped out by that scene because it is a little bit like it's very real, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Without any show that you see that has time travel, you're like, don't do it, Miss Frizzle.
Yeah.
You're gonna undo Arnold.
My gosh. It turns out bad. Yeah. I don't know. What are we missing, though?
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, but it's like, I think as far as a plot line that's actually engaging enough that people are not going to be pissed off to watch it.
Yeah.
I think we've at least come up with that much. Beyond that, it's just a matter of, like, we need to make sure that it's entertaining throughout.
Yes.
We can't really have any lull.
Yeah.
Because the original Back to the Future is just like it's fun all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's like we'd almost have to write it like it's a series of short films rather than one feature length film, where every scene has kind of a its own like plot line.
Yeah.
I can't think of the term for it, but
climax.
But like they're like it needs to have like its own full
resolution
kind of story that like keeps you engaged. And it's just like strung together where it's like problem after problem after problem. Like we can't have it be just drawn out in any way. So we'd have to put in a lot of like fun things, and we'd have to try and avoid, I think, references to the original as much as possible.
Do you have a Doc Brown character, or you just not have a Doc Brown character? Because like in the first one, Doc Brown is that character who kind of like knows stuff and is helping Marty, and but then it's like, that's why I was trying to like pull the grandma in, but I was like, like, is there just no character who knows what the heck is going on? Or Doc Brown could be that character in the notebooks where she's just reading through the notebooks and kind of like learning, but then it's like, how much fun is it to watch somebody read through notebooks?
Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know, man. Like I think that it would have to be somebody quintessentially 90s and like, and doesn't necessarily have to be like a scientist. They just have to be a little bit more well-read. Like maybe a lawyer, someone who can, or a doctor, like somebody who could read through and actually like understand, like,
what if
an engineer?
What if she finds Michael Biehn, the actor from Terminator who played Kyle Reese, and she's trying to get him to explain to her how to go back, and he's like, I don't know. Just like in the movie, I didn't build the thing, just like in the movie,
That would be hilarious.
But she ends up finding she finds kind of like a famous actor that she's just,
It could even just be like someone who like it could be. I love the idea of having it be Michael Biehn. But it could be like it's just a conspiracy theorist, like one of those like guys that has like a cardboard sign. And it's just this conspiracy theorist in the 90s who just believes everything that she's saying. And so it's like, because this is the only guy that believes her, like she's trying to get him to help her out. She could, but he doesn't really. I don't know. It's just someone to bounce off of, but I'm not sure.
She could have a teacher, like at school, who kind of talks about this stuff, Then she finds him, but now he's like way younger, and he's just like, I don't really know about any of this stuff, At this point, he doesn't really know.
She's kind of sparking, and she sparks an interest in it. In this guy. Who's like her dad's age. So he's like her age now.
He could be even older than her dad, so that now he's like kind of in his 40s or something like that, or 30s, I
think we should make it maybe a female teacher, so that the audience doesn't feel like, is there going to be some weird romance where like now she goes back and she's going to have a relationship with this 40-year-old guy.
And she falls in love with this guy and stays back in time and sends her brother back by himself, and she stays back in time. That's the Back to the Future movie I would write. The one with the serial killer grandpa. And
serial killer grandpa and an inappropriate relationship with a 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man.
Well, he's a normal age at this point, though.
Right.
In the future, he's
eventually going to go back to the future.
Well, she doesn't. Well, what I'm saying is, in my Back to the Future, she doesn't go back. She stays there, sends the brother by himself. And then everything just disappears like Thanos. Just the Thanos complete disappearance of everything. Like, oh no, I made a mistake.
Oh man, I don't know.
That's the Back to the Future I want to watch.
I almost don't even want that like character to bounce off of, like, or if they're there, they're a small part of it. Like I feel like it starts to get a little too cluttered at that point. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It's more something that you can't. I feel like I wouldn't know until I actually started writing it. You know? Like, sometimes you can't really know until you get into it, and it's like, okay, this is starting to get jumbled up.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like, part of the conflict with Doc Brown was he built the time machine, but then Marty's going back to a time before he builds it. So he doesn't even know how to build it. He's like kind of learning along the way. And the The bigger conflict is more just getting him back to his normal time in a time machine that I don't know how to power this thing. That's another cool thing too, is like them going back, you could have the ticking clock of them going back. But, you know, in the first one, the way they went back was Marty knows future information that helps them in the past to go back to the future, you know?
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, I guess we don't need to necessarily have that.
No, yeah. I mean, if there's, like, a teacher, like a science teacher, who, like, she goes back and then she goes and finds her and she's the same age. Yeah. And she's like, you're into this stuff. You're like, you know, you're into like Star Trek and stuff. And she's like a 17-year-old girl in the 90s who's trying to like keep it secret that she's a Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? You know? Then like that could be kind of a fun little, you know, like obstacle where she's like,
pre Big Bang Theory.
Right.
You didn't want to tell people you were into Star Trek and Star Wars.
No, Star Trek. Contrary to popular belief, Star Trek was not thought of as cool in the 90s.
Yes.
But now, Star Trek is super cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it so far. I think there's something there where you could make an entertaining movie out of it, but I feel like it's missing so much. Where
there's so much in the original.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to what makes it good. It's not just that it's a time travel movie or that there's, like, this dynamic between the two characters. Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, the amount of work that would have to go into this script is maybe more work than we have time for in a single episode, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's also because it's, like, you're trying to compete with the first one and make a movie that's equal to the first one. Like, you don't want to make a lesser Back to the Future movie if you're going to bring it back. You want to make something as good, you know, if not better, which is impossible, but you want to make something as good. And then it's like...
You don't want to settle.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think the grandpa... That grandpa storyline, I really see that grandpa storyline, because now...
Let's bring that grandpa back from the past so he could kill you.
What if the grandpa ends up killing one of them?
Make it really dark and have him kill the 5-year-old.
No, like, but when they go back into the normal time frame, those people are back there, you know? What if the brother doesn't disappear? He gets murdered by the grandpa.
Get out of here.
What?
Okay, well, I mean, I think that beyond what we've come up with, it's going to be details. It's going to be like, you know, little details throughout the story that make it good, that make it better.
Yeah.
But like, gun to our heads, gun to John Wick's dog's head.
Yeah.
We had to come up with at least a foundation that would make it engaging, that would make it where like people are actually going to enjoy it. This is a fun movie. It didn't ruin the original franchise.
Yes.
And that I think we've actually kind of figured out.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's what the thing is. sorry. I just came up with something. Listen, this one I'm serious about though. Okay. So she finds out during her time that one of the brother, because they're just two kids walking around, there's this clock on the time machine that's counting down, but the brother gets taken into like child custody.
Okay.
But she knows from the future timeline that like at a certain time there's like a, you know, something happens where she now can sneak in, grab the brother and get out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's something where in the future she knows that like, oh, this system that they use, you could compromise it with like a paper clip. You know?
Okay.
That like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like the door locks electronically, you know? But what people didn't know is that like, if you just shove a paper clip into that card reader, it short-circuited and the door would open, you know, like laughing, you know? But anyway, she knows this, so she can actually get in there, get her brother by using future knowledge to hack the system. But she still has to get her brother out of there into the time machine in time. And she's like running out of time to do it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's what I'm saying, though. Yeah. It's like anything that we do that's going to like make the movie better, it's going to be details.
Oh, Okay. You saw that as a detail. I thought that was...
Well, I mean, it's not like a plot point, or like, I mean, it is a plot point, but it's, you know, it's part of like, I think that the foundation though we've actually kind of figured out.
Okay.
I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied with what we've done here.
Yeah. Do you still think they shouldn't do it, or do you think that they should do it?
Should do what?
Oh, Back to the Future 4.
Oh, I still think they shouldn't do it.
Yeah. What if they told us...
Even with our incredible script.
Yeah. Even if we could write the script for it, would you or would you not do it?
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't do it.
I don't think I'd have the stomach for it.
Yeah.
You know? I don't think I'm that conceited.
Yeah.
That to think that like, oh, I'm just that good of a writer.
Yeah.
That like it's like if I'm gonna do a time travel movie, I'm gonna make an original one, and try and do it like I'll try and do mine justice, and maybe I'll try and compete with Back to the Future. Yeah. But I'm not gonna take something that exists and act like, oh, I could do it better. Like get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, you know? Like it's not your idea. You know, it's someone else's idea, and you're like adding stuff to it, and then like sitting on your high horse. Like, no, I'm not gonna do that.